The Trump administration is blaming the CDC and China for their delay in response to the COVID-19 crisis gripping the United States. The US has recorded more COVID-19 deaths than China. Over 800 people have died in a single day. Joining me now on the line is Professor Joe Siracusa from RMIT. Professor, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, Tanika.
Would you say that there's been certainly a bit of a rhetoric that's been going on between the both of them, but it seems to have gotten worse between China and the US over the last week?
Yeah, yes, it has, except for at the very, very top. For the last several months now, the U.S. State Department, beginning with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, has blamed the Chinese for concealing the outbreak of the COVID-19 crisis, concealing the numbers and the various things they were doing about it, and in fact even and then complaining about the Chinese spreading the story that it began with American military people who were in Wuhan for various sporting events. So, you know, in addition to the other things, the trade war, the South China Sea issue, in addition to the Belt and Road issues in other parts of the world, we have this increasing conflict with China. And, you know, ironically, in the last couple of days, the president called the leader of China and just cooled it. He's not going to call this the Chinese disease, which is ridiculous. The Chinese disease has as much to do with China as, you know, the Spanish flu had to do with Spain. So he started cooling it, and he's trying to figure out how to turn all this into an election winner. And this is very clever. The president was going to run on the economy, which has now crashed and burned. And now what he's going to do is he's going to run on his claims in 2015-16 when he was running for president, that his aim was to secure America's borders, which he's doing now with the COVID crisis, and that bring American manufacturing back to the United States. He's saying that we're too reliant on people, on nations like China and others when it comes crunch time in the United States. So he's very cleverly, I mean, he's an intuitive politician, very cleverly turned this into something very positive. But look, the conflict right now, the tension in Chinese-American relations is very high because official Washington has regarded China as the great enemy and a great power competition that has revived in the world. And so this COVID business has to be settled one way or the other. So the president has thrown a fig leaf to the Chinese. And, of course, Chinese-American relations now are run on the phone between the president and the president of China, President Xi, and everything below that is quite conflicting.
Yeah.
So we got several things going on here at once.
Yes.
While at the same time, the United States is trying to handle this terribly. We're going to find out the Chinese fatalities are probably much greater than anyone led on. Well, and we're never going to know certain things because of the asymmetric availability of information based on these kinds of people who've died. So, but anyway, the president is no longer running on the economy. He's going to run on who handled the coronavirus properly. And of course,
yes, it's been interesting to see how it's played out this week in the US. And you know, as you mentioned, I'm sure that there is also the election, the 2020 election, you know, running in the back of Donald Trump's mind. But I just want to move on because back home this week, Professor, we've seen Scott Morrison coming out very publicly criticising China's wet market practices where the virus is thought to have originated. Now, he's signalled Australia would take a strong stance through the UN into pushing China to ban the wet market. Can we expect other nations to follow suit, do you think?
Probably, but look, I wouldn't count on the UN to solve this. I mean, the UN has great difficulty coming to major decisions. I don't think the UN could name a statue anywhere in the world because the Security Council has the last say, and WHO has a great deal of Chinese influence on the panel. So it's not like anybody's going to get their way on this. It's okay for the Australian government, American government, others to argue that there were certain causes to this. But look, we don't really know much about how this thing mutated, but we do know this, that the coronavirus is very, very much related to other viruses in the past. So we got a great deal about that. And so I think the great issue now is that there should be international cooperation on how best to get this vaccine and then get it around the world. You know, this vaccine is the holy grail. And if Australian producers, if Australian scientists and labs can produce this ahead of anyone else, they're going to have the billion-dollar winner here and the prestige of leading the world in science. So we need this cooperation at the highest levels. So look, you can complain about where this thing came from. You can complain about who patient zero is, my favorite story. Who's patient zero, for God's sakes? But the important thing is we got to get this damn vaccine as soon as possible. We need it through international cooperation. And I think Australia is perfectly poised to do just that.
And fingers crossed they find a vaccination soon. Professor Joe Siracusa, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.